Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, folks, and you're all very welcome here this morning to Facebook for our quarterly funding and scaling event. And thank you to our hosts on Facebook here for having us here this morning. We're delighted to be here. First thing, let me explain some context, because I see a number of people who might be new to this event or to Dublin BIC. So Dublin BIC is a not-for-profit organisation working in the middle of the ecosystem here in Dublin, helping entrepreneurs start and scale their businesses. And that's what we do. We've been doing it for a good number of years and have a number of successful stories to tell. And over the last 3 years, we've run an annual event called Future Scope. And from that, we determined that there was a huge appetite for people to get together on a more regular basis and to try and understand and to collaborate and share stories and knowledge. And from that, we came up with our quarterly funding and scaling event. And we've run it mostly in the Marker Hotel over the last 2 or 3 years, and this is our first time coming to Facebook. So we're delighted with that. The purpose of funding and scaling is to give entrepreneurs an opportunity to hear stories, to share, to collaborate, to network, and to hear from successful entrepreneurs. And I think that's really important, because what we do is we bring back companies that we've worked with in the past, and we ask them to share their stories and to share their experiences, and hopefully then for entrepreneurs in the room who are thinking of starting and scaling businesses, it gives you an insight into what's required to scale and grow a business. So that's the context for the funding and scaling event. So why are we here in Facebook? Well, it's a cool building, so we thought we might like to come along and have a look, and I think you'll agree with that. But also, we're going to hear from John Carr of Facebook, who runs the small business side of that organisation, and he's going to tell us, I suppose, a little bit about how big corporates think, about how you could possibly learn from them around selling and growing your business in that small area. So today in the room, we've got entrepreneurs, we've got investors, and now we're bringing in that corporate element to give us, I suppose, a view of how the big corporates operate, and maybe we can learn from John on that. Our agenda for today is we have a number of speakers. We have an early stage startup in Patricia. We have a really successful entrepreneur in Gavin, who's going to share his story with us, and we're really looking forward to that. Gavin is quite topical and in the news this week. And then we'll find some time during that session for maybe 1 or 2 question and answer sessions. For the Q&A sessions, we have a microphone in the middle of the room. So because we're live on Facebook here this morning, I'm going to have to ask you to stand up, go to the microphone to ask your question, and you'll be live. So good luck with that. So that's what we're going to try. So that's what we're going to try and do this morning. We're going to try and share some stories. We're going to try and hear from successful entrepreneurs. We're going to try and hear from Facebook around how they've grown and built a business and how that's relevant to you and how you might learn from John and his team around that. And then we'll have lots of time for networking. We'll have some time for discussions and conversation at the end, and we'll get a coffee. And we should all be done by around 9:30. And that's what we're going to try and do this morning. To start us off, I'm going to ask my colleague Martin Murray to come up and join us. And Martin is going to be in conversation with an entrepreneur that we met about a year ago, Patricia Mangan. And we met Patricia on the Innovate the Female Innovate programme that we were running. And Patricia's journey is at the very early stage. And it's a particular play that Patricia is trying to achieve, and it's really interesting. So if I could ask Patricia and Martin to come up, and maybe you could kick us off with the conversations. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Martin Murray is my name. I'm a business mentor with Dublin BIC, and it's my great pleasure to welcome here this morning Patricia Mangan, founder of Maikology, to the Funding and Scaling series. Good morning.
Thank you.
Patricia, you are an accomplished architect, and I know that your education and professional experience as an architect has informed your work as a product designer. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, as you say, my background is in architecture, and I've been building and designing apartments and houses for years. And this then has informed, I suppose I've seen problems that exist within that context, and then tried to solve those problems. And also separate my own experiences, mother and living, and seeing and being frustrated by things that exist.
Okay, so I know that experience, both as an architect and as a mother, has led to one product which you have already very successfully conceived, designed, produced, and launched into the marketplace. Can you tell us about that? Yeah,
sure. It's an acrylic gate. It's a safety gate for stairs. And this was born out of, I suppose, again, frustration. The initial idea, the seed of the idea was sown way back when my now 23-year-old was a baby and used to be on the gate hanging out of the rails. And I thought, why are they designing this? Is crazy. That was the initial idea. And then also I would design contemporary homes with very nice staircases, and I'd come back a year later and there'd be a horrendous stairgate there, and I thought there's got to be something better on the market, and there wasn't. And so I aspired to design the most minimalist gate in the world, and that was my starting point. And I designed this acrylic gate that we then licensed. So that's the idea.
And so it is in the marketplace. Tell us about that.
So in terms of the process for that, we, with my business partner, Declan Kinahan, this would be a few years ago, he advised that I'd go take the ideas out of the drawer, get out to the trade fairs, which is what I did, and went to Cologne, and there met Jesper and Finn Anderson, who had a company, Safe Care & Co., and subsequently met them in Hong Kong, showed them the idea, and they liked it and they licensed it. So it's manufactured in China. It's now on the market through two brands, the Kudos brand in the States and Fred brand in the UK. And it's going to be, in terms of traction, it's going to Japan and Australia as well.
Okay, so I'm going to leap forward to today, and there's an even more ambitious project that you're involved in right now. Can you tell us about the product that you're looking to bring to market now?
Yeah, so the product's Orbison, which is a smart solar-powered clothes dryer. And this, again, was born out of my experience of designing apartments and houses and difficulties that I came across. So Orbison is a dryer that sits out in your garden or balcony. It dries your clothes passively. It has no running costs, no CO2 emissions, and it dries your clothes gently using clean.
Now, for the audience here, could you just give us a picture of what it looks like?
Yeah. Effectively, it's a large orb. A large black orb is what it looks like that sits out in your garden. It has a footprint of similar to a barbecue, but a larger form. And it protects your clothes from the rain, from pollution and pollen, and your clothes are out of view, so it makes it balcony friendly, because at the moment most people can't dry their clothes outside on balconies.
What's the market opportunity with such a product?
Yeah, well, we see it as a global market in terms of potentially with the initial market being North America. Because it's a solar product, so what we've looked at is areas of higher solar radiation. So that would be North America, Southern Europe, Asia and Australia. And what it's, in terms of as an appliance, so it sits as a product. It's quite a new product in that where it sits is between the existing outdoor drying, which tends to be clotheslines, and then indoor you have your options are your clothes horse and your electric tumble dryers. So we'd see this as a disruptive product that kind of straddles the two.
Okay. Give us an idea of the kind of journey you've made from conception to design, prototyping with that.
Yeah, it's well, the initial idea had the advantage actually of a recession is that you have time, and as an architect it went from being flat out busy practice to falling off a cliff and not so busy, and these ideas had been in my head for a while, so I was able to give energy and time to those back in around 2012. And so the process was I got a team together, and actually a guy, Colin Keogh, who actually has turned out he's a fantastic research engineer in UCD and was nominated as Forbes 30 under 30. So I picked well from the early stages. And we worked together, and we looked at developing the technology, and then captured some IP and applied for a provisional patent application. That was a couple of years ago. Since then, we've built the team and developing the R&D and trying to capture more IP around it. So that's where we're at the moment.
Okay, so you've developed a prototype, you've commenced the journey on patenting. The route to market for a physical consumer product such as this can be quite different to perhaps a software product that many people in the audience here would be more used to. Can you give us an idea? There can be quite a distance between having a fully working prototype and having a consumer product that I can actually purchase either online or in a retail outlet or some other way. What are the potential routes to market for such a physical consumer product?
Yeah, so I mean, this is a big play. It's a hardware play, and as the name suggests, hardware is hard, right? And particularly in Ireland. And what we're finding in terms of, particularly more recently, we're coming across what they call China speed and the speed of getting good ideas to market, and that's what we're up against now. So in terms of, to answer your question, route to market, for us and where we're at is we're at the stage where we're developing, as I said, we're trying to get to a point that we have a minimal viable product, and at that point we would be looking at doing a joint venture, licensing or manufacturing play, and we're examining all of those options at the moment. But in terms of the route to market, in terms of where it's going to be sold, is that what you're asking in terms of traditional routes, which would be like the likes of Argos and DID and all of those is the end game, if that's...
So just digging in a little bit deeper on the three options you gave there, the joint venture, the licensing or the manufacturing. Yeah. So can you tell us more about those? Who would the joint venture be with, the type of company it would be with? Yeah,
we're actually, in terms of, without giving names away, we're looking at a number of different options on that. And the aim would be, ideally, it's one in terms of dealing with companies that are dealing with appliances, and possibly in the solar space at the moment. That's what we're examining. But prior to getting to that, we're at this stage where we have concept proved and we have the R&D around that. But the aim is for the next, as I said, until September next year, is to get the minimum viable product. And the way to do that, we're looking at accelerator programs to speed up that process. And that's what our funding round is for.
Okay, so tell us about your funding round.
Yeah, so effectively we're looking for 250,000 and then match funding from EI, which we've already been supported by EI on with the female CSF program. And so that will be to finance, in terms of our team that we're expanding to take it, to get the R&D captured around that, and the IP. And a lot of what happens with the hardware play is the money that goes into the patents and securing those. So that's part and parcel of it.
Okay, so you see a big part of the expenditure from the 500k round being securing the patent rights on the product.
That's right, yeah.
Okay. A very different route to market you mentioned is manufacturing. That is, if you were to manufacture yourself, and that would give a very different funding profile to your requirements.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a different ball game that you would then. That's where actually probably the joint venture is more appealing, that you'd dealing with companies that are well established, because it's huge scale in terms of what we're talking about.
Okay. Do you have the next product in mind already?
Yeah. I
didn't know the answer to that question, but I thought that would be it.
Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of products coming down the line.
Okay, do you want to tease us with...
No, I won't at the moment, but yeah.
Okay.
But again, it does all come from my experience as an architect, and I suppose playing on that and seeing it, I see there's huge scope, actually. Yeah.
Okay, so everybody's going to have to come back to hear more about the next product next time.
Get this one over the line first,
Very good.
Main one.
Okay, Patricia, thank you very much.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you, Patricia, for coming in and sharing your story with us this morning. And I think one of the themes we're going to explore this morning is that kind of difference between hardware and software, and from an investor perspective, but also from an entrepreneurial and building that journey perspective. And then they can be quite different in terms of the length of time to market, etc. So thank you again for that, and thank you, Martin. Next up, we have John Carr from Facebook, and John heads up the UK and Irish team in small business. And John is going to share with us a couple of high-level thoughts, I think strategic thoughts around growing your business and giving us his experience. So John, maybe you'd come and join us. Thank you very much indeed. And a round of applause for John.
Good morning, everyone. Good stuff. So, as explained, that's me. My name's John Carr. I'm a lead in the SME team here. So essentially what my team does is work with businesses every single day to help them grow and scale using Facebook and Instagram as a platform and as tools to reach the customers that they really care about. So as Connor says, what we're going to do is we're going to set some context. So what we're looking at, think about 2004. I'm going to take it way back. So 2004, interesting year. Who has the market share, 90% market share of smartphones at that time? BlackBerry. Anyone got BlackBerry just now at the moment? At this point, there is no Snapchat, there is no Twitter. And a young Harvard student called Mark Zuckerberg decided to create something on his desktop computer called the Facebook. We dropped the. Fast forward to now, and some people may say that we are actually in the fourth industrial revolution. Now that's changed because primarily your mobile phone and because of digital. It's changing the game, it's changing everything entirely. So, interestingly, from the beginning of mankind to 2004, a lot of content created. But today, because of that mobile device, and because I can see people taking pictures just now, there's the same amount of content created every 10 minutes that there was beginning of mankind to 2004. So it's changing the game entirely. And it's changing business as well. So if you're looking at the 1950s, so the average lifespan of a top 250 company in the world, 67 years. So now, 40% of the top 250 companies, as they exist just now, last for 7 years. So an incredible rate of change, constantly changing, innovating. And that is because of the digital revolution. We're going to see this more and more with mobile. So what's really important, and one of the trends that we saw, and we saw back in the day, because as I say, 2004, Facebook was desktop. It was built on desktop. But Mark decided we would change, and we would turn this to a mobile-first company. The reason for this, if you were to look at platforms and you say it took television a good 50 years to reach 1 billion households, how long did it take the smartphone? 5 years. Oh. We'll jump back one there. So 5 years to reach 1 billion users. So we realized people were coming out of the platform using mobile, so we had to build specifically for that. It's your constant companion, it's always with you. Generally, people check their smartphones 200 times in a day. It's incredible. But people engage with the smartphone in a different way. It's very much lean-in technology. And it actually made us look and think, okay, how do we actually consume content? How do we consume media? Because it's different on a phone. I want to test this today. It's a bit risky, it's a bit rogue, considering, it's just past 8 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Thought processing, we used to think 300 milliseconds. Actually, 30 milliseconds. Now, that changes how quickly we can consume content. So we used to think we could read 300 words per minute. But if we start looking at the situation that we were in at that time, and change that, and manipulate that, we can read 500 words per minute. So I'm going to try and increase everyone's word per minute scale this morning. So if you focus in the middle of the screen here, it's on a mobile device, your eyes will not move. Everyone managed to keep up? Everyone managed to keep up? See? Don't you feel like a superhero now? You've increased that much of anything you're going to take away from Facebook, you can now read quicker. And that is because you're centered on a mobile device. So you consume content in a different way than you would if you were reading a book going left to right. You can't consume that as quickly. But the combination of video, which was that, and the combination of mobile, allowed you to increase the speed of reading. And it varies by age as well. So we did a little bit of research actually looking into how people consume content. And what you see is the 120s, if we were to set that as a benchmark of 1x, it takes people who are 60 and older 2.4 times longer to actually consume content. So something that is 3 seconds, a millennial who's under 20 looking at a piece of content for 3 seconds is so important because they can consume that and move on to the next thing. They've understood your brand, they've understood the product that you're selling, they understand that. Versus your 60 and older who would have to look 10 seconds or so. It just goes to show that the content that we're putting on Facebook and what we're producing is changing all the time. So again, 2004, text-based. No photos, it was all about statuses. It was all about, hey, I'm doing this today, this is what's going on, I've just done that. What ended up happening was there was a change to photos or it didn't happen. You know, unless someone takes a photo, did it really happen? Now, videos or it didn't happen. And so we're starting to explore and starting to think, what is next there? What is the future? What is virtual reality, augmented reality? How does that look? And so we're starting to bake that into the product to see what is the next shift, because we're always looking to try and understand what the next shift is in human behavior and how do we build products for that. But it's not just the millennials who are focused on mobile phones. It's not just millennials who are consuming content like this. So yes, there is an increase, but also Generation X and also the boomer generation have started increasing the amount of time they're spending on their phones, the amount of time they're spending on Facebook, the amount of time they're spending on Instagram as well. So it's not just the under 20s. And this is creating an appetite for consumption and connecting with consumers and businesses alike. So by 2020, we expect 50% of the connected world to be making online purchases. Now, in certain countries, that already far exceeds that. So in Germany, right now, 80% plus of connected consumers actually make purchases online. And it's through their mobile device. So you have to build for mobile and make sure it works there. A couple more stats. 3.5 billion people access the internet this year. And 80% of that is through a mobile device. So, what are people doing on these mobile devices? They're watching a lot of video. So on Facebook, 100 million hours of video are watched every single day. By 2020, we expect that 75% of internet traffic will be video. This is the shift, and this is what we're very much building for. What else is happening? People are connecting with businesses. So 1.6 billion people connected to a small business because they want to hear from small businesses. They want to hear from local business. They want conversation. 2 billion messages are sent between businesses and people through the Facebook page, through Messenger, every single month. It's opening up that conversation. It's making business personal, having that one-to-one communication. Speaking of video, another trend that we're seeing massively, and this is going to be one that's going to be such a focus and you're going to see it so much, is stories and vertical video. 94% of time with a mobile device is spent holding it vertically. So that's what we're building for. So vertical video is now across Facebook, and what we're seeing is massive consumption and creation from stories specifically. So Instagram just hit 1 billion active monthly users. So amazing stat, an app to get 1 billion people. And part of what's driving that is stories. So we launched it in October 2016. It took off immediately, 100 million people using it every single day. Now, we're at 300 million people using Instagram stories every single day. The rate of consumption and the rate of creation of stories is incredible. So we're seeing that as potentially one of the next big changes, and we're absolutely building for that. And you're going to see stories being embedded into Facebook, to WhatsApp, across the family of apps. So I want to give a few examples of some Irish businesses who are doing this well. So McGee's fantastic business, 4th generation, Charlotte Temple, now running that business. And what they're doing is they're using Facebook to actually grow their customer base outside of Ireland. So interestingly, 46 million people globally are connected with Irish businesses. So people are seeking out, and none better than McGee of Donegal, making tweed clothing. They've actually started investing a lot more in their digital marketing team because they understand that in order to connect with consumers globally, they need to start looking at what kind of content is being created, consumed, and how do they stay ahead of the curve there. And so they're now actually exporting to 50 countries worldwide. 1.2 billion people are connected to at least one business in a foreign country. we are in this world now where we can connect to so many different companies, businesses. It's not just the local shop that's next to you. You can shop from absolutely anywhere because of digital, because of online. Really interesting business, one that you wouldn't necessarily expect to really be innovating, but absolutely is Kerrigan's, so butchers. So Barry Kerrigan worked with his dad. 2007, they started did a full overhaul of the business to really adapt to modern butchery. So they were starting to look and think, okay, how can we take our products to the people that really care about it? So they've now invested in an app. They're now doing delivery. They're focusing in on healthy foods, easy to cook. They've actually just hired 2 digital marketers because the success they've found is that they've increased their user base by 25% directly by using Instagram stories. So they've been a massive success. So as I say, how do we stay ahead of this curve? It's important to get the right skills. So starting to look at digital analysts and digital marketers and starting to understand who our customer is, how we can reach them using these platforms. Because marketing in this day and age is agile. It's not stationary. You can't just use one piece of content, put it out there for 3 months. It has to change. It has to be personalized to the consumer that you're looking to reach. And it has to be focused on real results. If you're looking for an online sale, it has to be focused to drive towards that. Instead of proxy metrics, things like likes and comments, I'm looking for a big fan base. What you're looking to do is actually make sure that your objectives are what's going to feed your business. And to finish it off, what we're looking to do is move fast. There's a lot of change going on. Change can be a challenge, but it's also a huge opportunity. And if it's not going to be your opportunity, it's going to be someone else's. So if we don't take risks, we're guaranteed to fail. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks very much, John. Appreciate that overview and thank you for that. Okay, so we're going to move to our next conversation, and at the end of that then I'll open up the floor to some questions. So maybe you could kind of, if you want to ask a question on any of the topics we've covered thus far, at the end of the next session we'll take some, so maybe get yourself ready. So moving along then, when we do this event, we try to look at an early stage entrepreneur and explore that journey, and then we also try to look at a later stage entrepreneur and maybe try and contrast those 2 stories. So this morning I'm delighted that we have Gavin Walsh from iCabbi, and Gavin is going to join us. He's in the news. It's very topical. We're delighted that he found the time to come in and join us this morning. He's a great story, and I'm going to ask Maikology, who's the CEO of Dublin BIC, maybe to sit down and have a conversation with Gavin. So thanks very much.
Gavin, morning, sir. Yeah, Conor, thank you. And great to see a full room. And want to start by thanking Gavin again, because this man is on a very well-deserved break and heading this morning with his family to West Kerry for a short holiday break. So particularly grateful, Gavin, that he took the time to come in. Maybe I think when we're sitting down and having a little conversation like this, for people in the audience, it's always nice to get to know the person a little bit. So maybe before we delve in a little bit to iCabbi and your journey recently, just say a little bit about your own background, and I suppose how that might have led on then to the genesis or the initial idea for your organisation that you've co-founded and led.
Okay. First of all, just while I'm here, I'd like to thank this guy in particular. He's been a great supporter of iCabbi from day one, genuinely. So I suppose it's a good opportunity to thank you personally for that.
Thanks, Gavin.
Look, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. My father started Irish School of Motoring back in 1960 something, and
so there was entrepreneurship around the kitchen table, as I say, literally.
Well, look, I suppose I always grew up just wanting to kind of achieve something like he had achieved. So that was he was a big role model for me, and. So like I've had many business ideas, from selling Christmas trees to selling bikes, and I never kind of got typical jobs. What I always did was ran my own business, whether it was painting and everything. So everybody around my area knows exactly who I've always aimed to be. looking back, they were always pretty much quick buck ideas. And then kind of the iCabbi journey started, and that was a very different...
you were on, I remember our original conversation, and thank you for referring there earlier, but you were on holidays, if I recall, in the Canaries or somewhere, and difficulty getting a taxi.
It was in 2009. I was on holidays in Portugal with my pregnant girlfriend.
Yes.
My fourth baby's coming. That was the first baby.
Okay.
I got lost out walking. I just got one of the first ever iPhones, and I just had an idea that if I could see live taxis on the map on my phone, and then book one by pushing a button, it would solve my problem.
Yeah.
So I remember just getting really excited about the idea, which seems so obvious right now, obviously, but it was new back then.
Yeah. So that was the genesis of the idea.
Yeah.
And clearly you were an entrepreneur. You had the entrepreneurial, let's say, zeal, etc.
Yeah.
But to go from that, then I suppose I'm interested first of all for the audience, the formation of the initial team and the co-founders and the management team, because that's a big and important step. So
it's probably a more important step that I gave a credit for at the time. But as with all different business that I'd had previous to that, I'd always rely on friends. So I did exactly what my father always advised me not to. I built a business with a lot of friends in it. I suppose it's kind of worked out for us. But I got a good friend of mine's brother-in-law was a very talented developer called Niall O'Callaghan. And then soon after we brought in a guy a good friend of mine called Bob Nixon, who was running his mother's business called Georgina Campbell's Ireland guide. So he came in the commercial side, but the commitment of the early stage team is really what got us through incredibly difficult times. And Niall,
and just on that, like, people don't always realise, I suppose, some of those who've been through it and some do, but how difficult it really is in that first period. And you don't have to share all of the pain, but just give people a sense.
I often think if I'd have written stuff down, it would have been pretty cool to go back and because we've forgotten kind of. It's been a roller coaster journey. I mean, it's not easy. It's not for everybody.
No.
There's been more days than I will ever care to remember where you'd wake up, wishing you hadn't started this journey, because you find yourself in a prison sentence a bit where you don't have any option but to keep continuing. But so
you had the formation of the team, I suppose getting the funding then for that first round at the right time.
Yeah, look, we relied on family, friends, and so on. So my father was a great supporter of the business initially. Niall's dad as well. And then we went on kind of the journey of Dublin BIC and Enterprise Ireland. And we got AIB seed capital.
What year was that then? It was a couple of years.
That was late 2012. I think we got the money on 22nd of December. And nobody was getting paid for Christmas if we didn't get that check. So that was a difficult process, and you've got to get all three. Or there's a circle. If you don't get one, you don't get your money. Yeah. So obviously this morning we don't have as much time as we would like maybe to go into all of the detail as the panel overall is funding and scaling. So what I'm kind of keen to delve into in a bit more detail, I suppose, Gavin, is that you went through all the pain, the startup, the idea, the initial funding, and getting going. So there comes a point then when in your case anyway, did you realise you had something that was really good? Now I know as an entrepreneur, all entrepreneurs and you in particular would have believed what you had was. But there comes a point, I suppose, when the market validates that. Talk a little bit about when you realised that what you had was. I'm still probably questioning that. But anyway, I suppose one of in early, when we got our first big company live in 2012, a company called VIP Taxis here in Dublin, and a guy from Leeds who was the biggest, our competitors first. Like the biggest company in the world is a competitor of ours. Their first ever customer was this guy from Leeds, very well-known guy in the UK market. He'd fallen out with them. So he was travelling the world looking for a new dispatch system. And for taxi companies to move system where they're doing 100,000 bookings a week is an incredibly difficult thing. So I'm just going to interrupt you for 1 second because I'm just thinking for the audience, not everybody will know, and we said at the outset your initial idea was to be able to book a cab. So I suppose that was on a business to consumer, B2C. Yeah. But you may just share what you ended up with in terms of platform software. We pivoted in 2012 and really we're a software company developing booking systems for traditional taxi companies. Yeah, so you're helping the, I suppose, traditional dispatch operators who have people on telephone who are becoming disintermediated by the new B2C. It's such a big market, like there's still 940,000 cars in it globally, and really our goal is to give those guys the tools they need to compete against the new threats, invaders as we call them. Yeah, so you were saying then that the UK, let's say... Yeah. So this guy called Andy Pennick, he'd been looking for dispatch systems all over the world, and he found this small company in Dublin. There's only a couple of us at that stage, and came over to VIP taxis. And we were like, that was a small company. He's a very large company. But over the course of a couple of years, I became great friends with them. And every time we did an update, because in software we're doing updates probably every day, to be honest.
Yes.
And it was 2014 when we put our first company live in January 2014 in the UK. And in March, sitting in a pub, he lives in Emmerdale in the UK, and sitting in a pub, and he kind of said, right, you're nearly there. And we did a deal, we hammered out a deal, and that was a major milestone really in the journey. Getting the confidence of an operator like that, who's one of the biggest operators in the UK, was critical.
Yeah, and
absolutely a big step.
He had been monitoring you very closely.
He'd been following it very closely,
and ensuring that the platform was sufficiently robust to put in as the backbone for his company. And
our challenges, while it might seem obvious, was that trying to convince taxi companies that there was stability in the cloud. So we were in AWS, and it's proved to be so much more stable than locally based systems.
Yes, so at that stage then, Gavin, you're now into real growth mode. Talk now, because you've got a new set of challenges then as a CEO and with your co-founders and management team. You've got a whole new set of challenges. I mean, you've ended up today with about 80 people?
Yeah, we've about 85 now, which so is going to change now significantly.
Yeah, we'll come to that. But, your challenges then became, delivering on the opportunity that's out there. And there are a whole new set of challenges. Talk about that within the company, and I suppose hiring people in HR and...
Okay, there's so many challenges. It's difficult to. But for me, to be honest, what's the culture in the business is a big thing. So we do like to go on parties, and we like to make sure everyone's having a good time. Work needs to be a place that people like to go work, and the kind of numbers look after themselves to a degree. Somebody said to me recently, the minute you hit 51 people, it just changes. Though everyone's looking for more money and so on. But it's been a really difficult journey for me, genuinely. Every day you're doing different things. I'm not really that holy, but I find myself praying on a Sunday night, hoping that the following week is going to be, I just get to the end of the week and that it's a good week. People is where the main challenges are. Genuinely.
And you speak about culture there, and you've spoken already, about your family in the background, and values, and all these things are deeply embedded. So they're so important. So culturally within how would you describe the culture and the
look in our business? People all want the business to succeed. One of the culture values that we have in the business now is passion. We have a chance to change an industry, and as I say to people in the business, there's not many jobs that you could get that you actually have a chance to change an industry. Look, that's exciting to me, and that needs to be exciting to be everybody in the business.
That's very, very, very aligned, I think, with a lot of younger people today are keen on making an impact, and all people are, so give them that opportunity. So expanding then, you were in the UK, but then the US started to come as an opportunity, just staying with the expansion of the organisation. Yeah,
so we've completed like 350 million trips successfully now since inception. We're in Ireland, England's a big market for us. The US is a big market, which is under a big threat from Uber, and we're in Canada. So we're going into Europe. We got a Finnish company live, I think this week maybe. So look, it's all about scaling for us. Our goal is to be the biggest and really to be the engine that drives the industry going forward.
And you said there, this is an industry with just phenomenal change, from car rental to car ownership to driverless cars. So just talk a little bit about the opportunities that's presenting, I suppose.
It's undergoing unprecedented change. Like this level of disruption has never been seen in history before, in any industry at any level. There's 30 billion invested in mobility last year. The traditional taxi industry, got none. So obviously, like the news that we've announced recently is a big step forward, and I'm very proud to be part of that because it's good for our customers, it's good for the industry, and I think we can really make big change now. Yeah.
So by the way, folks, I should have said at the outset, we're definitely going to be taking questions. So I have a little think there. We'll come to you now, maybe in a couple of minutes for a few questions, and then maybe a few more further on. with that unprecedented level of change, I mean, does it bring challenges in terms of choosing, where you're focusing? Because you have this technology, but there are so many opportunities now, I imagine, you're being presented with.
Look, I suppose, so we've done a deal recently, and people will be expecting change immediately. Yeah. I've personally said, so we have a 72-month plan, while those KPIs are going to be important, getting the foundation right, so we need to make structural changes in the business. Yeah. We're going to be adding a lot more staff. Yeah. My dream of creating a global innovation centre in Sutton Cross, where I'm from, is now alive and well, to be fair. And we've got companies travelling from all over the world, travelling to Sutton to see what we're doing. So look, there's going to be a lot of changes. But
long way from those Christmas trees, good man.
Yeah, which is still a good business. I'll tell you, if it doesn't work out, there's money in that.
So just on the transaction, which I was going to come to, but you're referring to there. So it's in the public domain. Obviously, in the last couple of weeks, that you've completed a transaction where a subsidiary of Group Rane have taken a 75% stakeholding in the organisation. So I suppose talk about the drivers for that first of all. And
well, look, we've been looking for money for 20 months now, to be fair, and we've had VCs approaching us, PE companies, and our growth rates are quite exceptional, so they've been good. So we're appealing to a lot of these, but finding the right fit wasn't that easy, because at the end of the day, it's a market that faces an uncertain future.
Yes.
So we spent a lot of time going through.
You had a lot of suitors
with PE firms, and you get to the end of the journey, and then they're questioning whether Uber is, So we found a strategic partner who came to us that faces the same challenges as we do. They're RCI Bank, which is the finance. It's the bank behind Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi. It's the biggest car group in the world, and they know when autonomous cars come in 30, 40 years, whenever that is, when nobody's buying cars, they'll have nobody to sell cars to. Yes. So they see an opportunity in the taxi industry, and they went and did a bit of due diligence on the industry and found us being the best provider out there, and they've taken a 75% stake in the business, and they're going to give us capital to scale the business out quite quickly. So it's a really exciting couple of weeks, to be fair. We've been 20 months trying to get here. I've kind of felt at times that it's been a lift door closing a little bit, and we've just got our foot in the door. And it's wide open now.
It's well open now.
It's well open now, yeah.
And the plans, in so far as what you can say, but in terms of growing the company now, you're around the 80 plus people. Look, where you can see it going over the next couple of years.
I can't exactly share the exact strategy, but look, my plans are, I want to be down. I want to be sitting having a pint at Christmas, thinking that the business is moving in the right direction. We were a very sales focused business, which is a good and a bad thing. You'll have heard the term sales solves all, but what it does is it creates a lot of pressure on R&D, where when you're in sales mode, you're saying yes to a lot. So your every customer wants a button moved a different way, in a different colour. They may not be the right things to do. So you end up with a lot of commitments that might not be the right thing for your business. So we've got to unravel that a little bit. We've been kind of pushing a snowball. It's gotten bigger and bigger, and we've kind of gotten to be, it's a snowball we can't really push anymore. So over the next 6 months, we want to bring in experience. We want to add to the team. We want to get the message out there globally about what we're trying to achieve. And again, my goal is to get to Christmas and to be having a pint and thinking that the business is really on the right path.
So it's almost listening to you, Gavin. What I think I'm hearing is that you've gone through these, your initial phase, and then your rapid growth, and then scaling yourself. But now it's almost repositioned again, structure for proper, serious next level of growth.
Yeah, look, we're going to be a very, very different business. Like, we've 85 staff, and really the way we've run the business is every time we take on a new customer, it gives us money to hire a new member of staff. So we've been certainly we've been constantly trying to build out the team to resource it properly, and it's been an impossible task, because as the business gets bigger, the commitments get bigger, demands get increased from customers, so it's impossible. So I think now we've a chance to kind of really set a vision to our customers and hopefully get buy-in from them, and not sit in the fence too much, which we have been.
Yeah. So we'll go for a couple of questions now, but just to take the opportunity there to really compliment you, Gavin, on the journey and your phenomenal passion, which entrepreneurs come in all shapes and sizes, but it doesn't need me to say it. It comes across so clearly, I think, and to where you've ended up. And I know it's only the end of the beginning now, which is the exciting part, I think, altogether. Yeah. We go to the floor for a moment for questions. If there's anybody would like to pop your hand up if you got a question. And and I'm going to ask you if you pop out onto the central aisle. We've got a mic there because we're streaming live on Facebook Live, or streaming on Facebook Live, and just maybe say who you are and introduce. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'm Ty. I'm from Huggity. Thank you for being here. So I'm wondering, Uber is your biggest competitor. How are you marketing your app or your business to compete with Uber? Because I know that they're all over. I mean, on Instagram, I'll be scrolling through my thing and I'll just see an Uber ad kind of popping up out of nowhere. How are you marketing iCabbi to compete with Uber?
Okay, I'd say first thing, Uber is the best thing that ever happened to us. I definitely wouldn't be here if Uber wasn't here. So taxi companies that had traditional, so they didn't want to move. It was too difficult. It was, there'd be massive disruption. So they had to move. They needed to reinvest in technology. And this young company came about with new technology, and some of the proactive kind of early flagship customers saw they needed to move. So the My Taxis and all that is the reason why we got initial traction. That's the first thing. Second of all, the taxi industry, so we're not directly competing. If you like, we're giving the taxi companies the tools to compete. So we're not a B2C business, we're a B2B business. But in the UK, we've got 23 million user records in the UK alone. So 1 in 3 people have used our systems. And while we all see, look, what Uber's done is amazing, and I use it when I travel to cities. My goal is ultimately that the companies that we're providing have apps that will give the same levels of kind of service and experience. But there's different markets, like tier 1 cities like London. Obviously, Uber is very dominant. But when you go outside, more parochial UK and different cities around the world, Uber isn't as big. They're there. They're never going to have the committing the marketing budgets to really trying to dominate those cities. They just want a presence. So I've got many, many, many examples of Uber being there, but also the traditional taxi companies actually being much larger outside. So I'd kind of separate it between tier 1 cities where they've gone in and they've really dominated but there's a lot of tier 2 cities and tier 3 cities. So,
and Gavin, we should probably separate a little bit as well, though, that apart from the fact that you're helping the traditional old school dispatch operator with 200 to 500,000 cabs or whatever they are, but you're also changing I won't say the life, but you're changing and empowering the owners of those businesses because with your new technology. Just talk a little bit about that. I mean, I remember you telling me a number of years ago, about, I think it was a lady heading one of the taxi companies in the UK, and that, she could now get all the instant data on the number of bookings and the number of revenues and all this. That was, you had to wait for the end of the month accounts before for it.
Yeah, look, an interesting point. If you ask every single taxi company globally how they measure their success, they will all say how many cars they have, how many drivers they have, because the drivers pay them. Obviously, Uber changed that. It's all about customers and in every modern day business. So we're trying to educate them right now. That's going to take a bit of time. But these companies have hundreds of thousands of customers. So they need to own that customer journey. Right now they don't. So we're making big investments right now into understanding that customer journey, and also then trying to educate the taxi companies as to their customers. They've got to follow the money. The customers are the one paying everything out. So
very good. Another question. Mark, how are you, Mark? Morning. Mark, you pop out there.
Hi, Gavin. Fantastic story.
Thank you.
Your father is to blame for my bad driving. So,
oh, really? Yeah. Maybe me too. I was a driving instructor too.
So if anyone gets run over outside, we know where to point. But look, guys, a really brilliant story. The thing I'm interested in is you come to this point where an external investor is coming in. Did you make a decision not to proceed on your own bat, rather than bringing RCI into the business?
Absolutely. Look, I have a presentation that I'm doing for different people, and 30 billion has been invested in mobility. So there's a party going on in terms of major players like there's Bosch and Intel, and these guys aren't even recognised in the traditional taxi industry. And mass, which they predict to be one of the highest growth kind of industries in the world over the next 10 years, the taxi industry can play a big part in that. So I think to have a seat at the table, you need a global player behind you. For us, again, look, different businesses will face different challenges, but particularly where the taxi industry is just facing unprecedented disruption and threats, we need a partner that shares those threats and that can actually stand up to the might of these new invaders, as I'll call them again.
Thanks, Gavin. Anybody else there with a question? Yeah, please, if you pop out there as well. Thank you very much.
Liam, LTC Local. What advice would you give a startup going to the market on pricing it? Like, how did you set how much you were going to charge your customers? Or what advice would you give a company getting there in order to get traction in the market to start?
First advice I give anybody going, I'd say don't do it. It's too difficult. Get a job and just go home and let it be somebody else's problem. In terms of pricing, look, it's incredibly important. If I do not have any great words of wisdom, we just heard about a company that was charging something and we charged a bit more, to be fair. I think we've underpriced it for what we're doing still to this day. But the pricing models, obviously there's many ways to skin the cat, if you like. Look, there's pricing experts that now we're possibly looking to bring in, but I honestly would say, a few years ago we were expected to build a dispatch system. Then we needed to be experts in telephony, so we bought a telephone company, a cloud-based one. Then all of a sudden consumer experiences started becoming a big thing. Then driver experiences started becoming a big thing. Then business intelligence, accounting packages that everything is done with. We're nearly still operating on the same pricing that we were just for that dispatch system. So I do not have the silver bullet answer for that question, unfortunately, because it's something that we battle with every day. So apologies for that.
Gavin, I might just ask you one there. I was just on listening to the radio earlier this morning. There was a discussion going on about Ireland and R&D investment and the levels of it internationally, etc., and where we are. What's your own take? I mean, you have a highly innovative company with a B2B platform software now that's performing extremely well globally and ready for the next stage of growth. What's your own observations and where we're at overall, where we've come over the last maybe 10 plus years and where we're positioned?
In Ireland?
Yeah, in terms of innovation, global competing globally. Yeah,
look, just to speak from my own experience, but John McCarthy from Arup Consulting said that Ireland has a chance to be a mobility hub for the world. We brought in the smoking ban. That was a very bold move, and I think it's a small country where people can get the right connections they want.
Great.
Through networking and so on to make real change. So I think Ireland is a great testing ground, and I think if you can prove it, like it's very difficult to prove it in America, for instance. You might prove something in one state, but Ireland, we've a great chance to actually prove it in a nation that everybody knows. People all love coming to Ireland, so it's all about proving concepts, and there's some great companies appearing, and you'll know more about them. And I go to different conferences, and there's companies down in Limerick and Kerry, and they're creating a great work-life balance. But they have a chance to kind of capture a nation, if you like. And there's not many countries where you can do that. So I think I genuinely, I would never consider moving out of Ireland. I think Ireland's been really important. And people love travelling, to Ireland.
So we've got about literally a minute, 2 minutes, and I want to make sure we keep us on time. We take another question. Just here, and we'll take one more then after that, which is further down on the same side. Thank you.
Hi, Adrian O'Farrell, My Live Medical. You've gone through the whole series now to getting really big funding, from starting with family and friends. Along the journey, how have you gone about valuing the company?
So we got our seed investment in late 2012. AIB seed fund just put a valuation on it. I think we negotiated for it to go up a little bit. We never did a Series actually, to be honest, we debate this quite frequently whether we should or not. So we kind of went down EIS route, which was the old BES business expansion scheme that worked very well for us, where kind of family and friends, different investors, more private investors can get good tax rebates. Then we went down venture funding in the last couple of years. Valuing the company. Look, you can look at different SaaS matrix, but you'll apply them to different industries. So obviously in the taxi industry, to get a 10 times multiple of revenue might be challenging. So we literally had a VC in America that approached us, and they gave us a valuation based on our numbers, and we used that as a benchmark. That was about 20 months before that funding process failed. We did another one. The other one, it went up because our numbers had gone up. And then the next one, it went up again. So again, it was kind of driven by the people that we were speaking to, as opposed to really us.
We take one final question down. There was a man, sorry, was there a question down there? Yes, that man. And just while he's, go ahead. Actually, you have a microphone down there.
Yeah, Gavin. First, congratulations,
Thank
great
you.
story. Barry Gavin from Spruce Innovation. Quick question on. One of the challenges facing businesses starting off is the challenge of profitability versus scale. So in other words, do I look to have a profitable business before I start to scale, or do I look to scale first? I'm just wondering, was that a challenge for you? And if it was, how you went about addressing it?
Look, the mindset in Ireland will be very different than the US, and that's for sure. Look, profitability, I think once you get that right product market fit, and then you're into fast selling and scaling, if you like, it shouldn't be about profit in my view. I think that's going to hold you back. We kind of, because of the way we funded the business, we were always trying to keep our costs and revenues kind of pretty much level, but maybe that slowed down growth. You look at the way our companies operate in the US, they just get huge funding, so they go into that valley of death for quite a long period of time, and they throw money at it basically, but they're getting much bigger success stories. So look, it's a difficult one. It depends on the business. It depends on probably the opportunity. But for me, certainly profitability, it's going to hold you back if you're looking for profitability, definitely. So it depends what your ambitions are.
And maybe just as a segue from the question to rounding off, of course, profit is as I said, a reward for risk taking. And Gavin and his colleagues have returned a very, very strong, provided incredibly strong return for the early investors in that company. And every entrepreneur, of course, believes. When at Dublin BIC we run the HBAN, the Halo Business Angel Network, and of course every entrepreneur believes that their entity is going to succeed. But the figures, of course, are that about maybe 60% of companies that raise business angel money will provide less than 1x, so somewhere between 0 and 1 back, and then there are 10% of them will provide really, really high return, and within that 10% there are a small number. This is one of those. So the entrepreneur has to believe, but a huge risk for the investors as well, and this is one that has delivered. Gavin, I just want to say in conclusion a couple of things. We put in place funding and scaling a couple of years ago, really to out and share with the audience, I suppose, the journeys. It's a particular personal pleasure to sit here this morning with someone like yourself, Gavin, from the very, very early days when you came in 2009 or 10, probably 2010, and had that initial conversation, and to watch your growth and see it, and to really just compliment you on your enormous energy and entrepreneurial spirit, and to see that link from your dad, from the school of motoring to the modern version of it now with your software for the taxi industry is just, and when I sit in a rocking chair at some stage and look back, it's actually journeys like you that I find so inspiring. So on behalf of everybody here, I wish you the very, very, very best of luck. I'd say congrats, but I particularly wish you the best of luck with the next stage of the growth of iCabbi.
We really appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gavin.
Super. Thanks very much. Super. Thank you. Okay, so you take your seats there, guys. Thank you very much. And we're going to move on and set up our panel discussion. But just reflecting one or two points from Gavin there that I thought were just super from an entrepreneurial perspective. This notion of I want to be the engine that drives the industry. It's a lovely position if you can find that you're the engine driving a particular industry, which is really good. And the lovely one around, I want to build a global innovation centre in Sutton Cross. Isn't that just fantastic to have that vision that you're going to build this big... and the last one then, I've never heard it described like this, but describing your market. There's a party going on and we're going to be a part of it. It's fantastic, isn't it? In other words, there's so much activity happening. So anyway, thank you, Gavin, and thank you, Michael. We're going to move to our last segment, which is the panel discussion, and we've some investors, and Gavin's going to rejoin us again for the panel discussion, and we're going to explore some of those themes, but also get a view from investors and the entrepreneur around some of the themes we've talked about this morning. And at the end of that, then I'll find some time for questions. So maybe if you, as you're listening to the panel, thinking about what you'd like to ask them, please do. So if I could ask Alan Hobbs from Enterprise Ireland to join us on stage. If I could ask Punam Rane, who's one of our angel investors that we work with, is going to join us. We have Victor Corcoran from the Dublin BIC Venture Fund is going to join us. And then Gavin, if you could come back up again for the entrepreneurial angle, that'd be super. Okay. So thank you very much, guys, and thank you for your time. There's water there if you want a water. Punam, I'll leave that there for you. Okay, I'll sit over here, so perfect. Okay, so guys, maybe if I could just, if you'd give me maybe a 10-second intro on yourself and what your kind of background, just 15-second quick overview.
Okay, I'm Punam Rane, and I have a company called Business Enablers. The background or why I started this company is to invest into startups. Coming from a background where I used to head technology departments in investment bankings and consultancy firms. This was kind of led to me starting my own company, but also an opportunity where I saw that instead of starting my own business, I kind of thought, why not invest into startups where I can provide mentorship, kind of give the guidance to take them to the next level, or some of them from the initial phase to a certain level, just to kind of bring that experience of mine, having set up 2 R&D centers for the 2 investment banks that I used to work for. So that's what I do, and then I became part of HBAN, which is Hello Business Angel Networks, and after joining HBAN, I started investing in these startups. So that's the background.
Thank you. Victor?
Good morning, Victor Corcoran. I lead Dublin BIC venture team. We're in the final stages of launching a new fund targeting early stage companies. The team was an investor in iCabbi through the IB seed fund. Before venture, I ran businesses. I ran a company called Excelco for 2 years, and prior to that, I ran primarily telecommunications businesses. I spent 7 years running various business units for a mobile phone company in the Caribbean.
Thank you. Alan, you're welcome.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. Alan Hobbs. I manage the HPSU division for life sciences and industrial products. About 14 months in that role now. Prior to that, I was head of comms in EI for 5 years. 16 years overseas in Taiwan, Korea, Silicon Valley and Beijing. I also had a small business selling Christmas trees, but unfortunately I didn't have quite the success of this man here. But
you didn't make the leap.
No, I didn't. So I should have.
and Gavin, we know you. Thank you so much.
A flood of Christmas trees now.
Yeah. You heard it here first. Christmas trees. If I could start, thank you. So if I could start, maybe, and Alan, I'm going to come to you first. And the question we heard this morning about Patricia, who's got a hardware startup, and then we heard Gavin's story, which is a more software-based platform. Are there differences from you as an investor in looking at those and what you're trying to figure out what's investable, what's not?
Okay, well, I guess the time of growth that we work with companies is primarily on the scaling journey. So it's post-investments. We have a start team that work with companies in the idea generation, the business plan preparation, pitch preparation, and then it comes over to the team that I work with on the scaling journey. And I think fundamentally, whether it's hardware, software, middleware, malware, it doesn't really matter. The fundamental building blocks are very, very similar. So the kind of things that we're looking for when we're putting an investment in companies is, number one, that they have a global ambition. There's no point trying to develop a product or service for the domestic market. It has to go beyond the shores of Ireland. It's too small to build a substantial business of scale unless you move to other markets. The second thing will be that you have a cracking business plan that you can execute. And within that business plan, the 4 key pillars that we look at, the right product, i.e. it's differentiated from something else, it's meeting an unmet need, you've got the right team, which is absolutely crucial, you've got funding in place, and you've got a route to market. And then, the other thing that we'd look at is that, within the team, that you've got an acquiescence of vision, that you need to have people that are going to go on this journey with you and that you actually like to work with them and that you can get on with them.
Punam, could I come to you as the angel investor and get your view?
Okay, my view is a bit different. Hardware and software, the journey in some ways is similar, but they're kind of different markets, different aspects, and the way they started as well is different. One being with the hardware, I think the startup journey is a little bit more longer because just the elements around what you need versus the software business. So again, as investors, it all depends on whether what your passion or your vision is towards either the hardware or the software. So definitely the investors differ. Because the same investors that can see the hardware aspect don't see the software aspect sometimes. But sometimes they come together where you have multiple angel investors. But individually, it all depends on what your background has been and what your personal experience has been.
Okay. Okay, Victor, as you enter the market, hopefully over the next couple of months with your fund.
Well, Gavin mentioned, first of all, that he moved from being a consumer business to being a business-to-business business. So I think there's a massive difference between even a hardware being sold to consumers and a hardware being sold to businesses. In our earlier fund, we also invested in a business called Red Tea, which I would consider a hardware business, but it was selling batteries into industry. So it was very much an enterprise sale, and that was not a very successful investment for us. So hardware business can get investment, but consumer hardware businesses are very difficult to fund in Ireland. You can have very successful consumer hardware businesses. Oculus was bought by Facebook here for 2 billion, but typically consumer hardware businesses need a lot of money, and that money is not available. They also have the gross margin is much lower because you have to invest in the hardware, you have to invest in the patents, as Patricia said. So it takes a lot more money at the beginning. So they're Irish funds in particular are much less likely to invest in them because they don't have the size of fund to be able to follow a consumer hardware business. They're also statistically much less likely to succeed, and there has been extensive studies done on consumer hardware businesses that have raised money, and only 25% of them go on to raise further money after the first round, while a typical software business will 1 in 2 actually go on to raise further money. So they're harder to scale and they're much harder to fund in Ireland for that.
Okay, thank you. Gavin, moving to you and picking up Victor's point there about this B2B and B2C. So you started off as a kind of a B2C business, you moved across. Just talk a little bit about that, because I'd like to explore it here from the investor perspective, but I'd love your view on it.
It's an interesting one. So we started out effectively trying to be a peer-to-peer app like Uber, and we came across. So our aim really was to link together taxi companies through one technology and then market them under one brand. So we're kind of doing a bit of a mix of both, and then we came across a company, VIP Taxis in Dublin, who they said if we give you all the coverage, we'll end up buying back work that was ours in the first place. So at that point, we made a decision. If we wanted to proceed and get this deal, we had to drop all B2C aspirations. So the name is quite B2C. I still love the name as a B2C name, to be honest. But we've dropped all B2C aspirations and just sticking with B2B.
Punam, Punam, from an investor perspective, that B2B, B2C?
Again, it's the business model that we look at, how scalable it is, what kind of markets it's going to. So it all depends. Sometimes the B2B is a successful model. Sometimes the B2C is a successful model. It all depends on what the business is. Like the example of Gavin, obviously he must have seen an opportunity there to move from B2C to B2B. So again, that's sometimes the own companies that they look at, and we look at those companies and the vision that they have. And if we feel that the B2C is a model that they need to, sometimes we do mentor them and bring them along the line or give them the insight as to why they should stick to B2C and why they should stick to B2B. So again, it's a mix and match sometimes.
But the perceived wisdom would be that to build a B2C business is a hugely costly affair. Alan, maybe from your side around, the investment required in marketing just to scale up in a B2C context is challenging.
Yeah, it's hugely challenging, and it's all about the brands, and brands take a lot of money to build. Our own experience in EI is that, you know, we write about 100 checks a year for the HBSU companies, and there's less than 4 or 5 that will be in it, and very often they start off in that space and they migrate into a B2B. It's just the scale of funding required to make an impact is just, it's huge.
Okay. If I could move on and just, so Gavin, you said you started in 2009 and we're now kind of 9 to 10 years later, and you're just now getting ready for the next stage in the evolution. So the journey for the entrepreneur who's kind of thinking about starting a business, maybe Victor kind of talk to us about, everyone thinks this will all happen so quickly. I'll build it, I'll start to sell it. You know, 6 months later we'll be raising a fund and sure, it'll be grand. But actually, what's your experience looking back over that time horizon? What should entrepreneurs be thinking about, and the steps, I suppose, along that journey, and start to paint that picture?
It takes a lot longer to raise money than people would anticipate. It takes a lot longer to build a business than people would anticipate. It's a particularly difficult market in Dublin at the moment because there is very little money in formal funds available. So I think it's about having a plan, reaching out early to make sure you have the necessary contacts, take people along a journey with you, bring on board mentors with experience, but try and reach out to people like Gavin who've built a business before and can help you deliver on that plan. But it's very much about understanding that it takes longer and reaching out to people early to start building a relationship, because relationships are key. People are investing in people, they're investing in relationships. Now, Dublin is relatively easy to do that because it's a small town, it's easy to get to meet people, it's easy to network, but I don't think you can set up a business, come out with an idea, launch it and expect to raise money in 3 to 4 months. No, it'll probably, typically I think companies coming out NDRC now 18 to 24 months after they come out before they're actually getting formal funding. So it does take time as you build trust and show traction.
And so that traction point then, Punam, as an investor, you're looking for certain proof points or certain steps along that journey. What are you looking for when you're looking at a company, you're thinking they're getting ready for investment? What do you want to see?
We would like to see the team, right? People make a big difference to an organization. So we definitely like to see what kind of a team the company is building and what kind of a team they're going to start building over the couple of years. Next is, I would say, what are they going to set up or leverage against? They need to definitely have networks to, even like Victor said, funding and all that. What are the pipeline of funding that they're looking for initially, and what are the pipeline down the line that they're looking for? So that would be main things. And also, where are they going to start? As an investor, what's going to be the break-even point? Okay, that's the number one, financials that we do look at. What's going to be, is it going to be a 3-year thing or is it going to be 5 years? So we know what we are getting into and what we are investing into and how far the investment will last, and what is the next round of funding also that you have or you're thinking about. Are you going to be doing that? And I think they should, but again, not everyone thinks down the line, but that's something that they need to think, that first investment, the next investment, or the third investment, that will get them there.
And from your from your perspective then, Gavin, like if we met you and Michael did in 2009, you would have been thinking this will be a kind of a couple of years, and here we are nearly 10 years later.
By 2010, multi-millionaire, you'd be like Mark Zuckerberg, you start your business. And, that's how I think entrepreneurs think. Look, just to back that up, I think you can never raise enough money, first of all. I think we went through the NDRC launchpad and we got to see a lot of other businesses. I remember being very impressed by the talent that they're surrounded by, but they've had, I think, 300 companies going through that, and I think the stats will show. I think there's a bit of luck involved. People will say that's not right, but it's a very difficult journey. Very smart people start that journey and don't succeed, but in a way, a good team can probably make a mediocre business work. A bad team won't make a great business work. And the idea, which I used to always think was the critical part of it, actually is a really small part of it. It's all about the team. And there's a saying I heard: when you get to running £1 million business, you're going to be terrible at it. You're going to be terrible at it until you battle your way through to running a £2 million business. then you're going to be terrible at running a £2 million business. You'll probably be good at running a £1 million business. So I think getting people involved and getting mentorship. And I've had some great, Stuart Kenny from Paddy Power, Bobby Healy from Cartrawler. These guys are generally quite willing to come out and talk to you, and it inspires you, first of all, and definitely helps a lot. It really helps. So mentorship is critical. Entrepreneurs need to go seek it, because there's a lot of learnings and mistakes that can be avoided by just surrounding yourself with good people.
Fantastic. I'm going to come for questions after I've just one or two more here, so I'll be out for questions now in a second. Alan, thinking about scale and the traditional route, somebody says is I'll prove it in Ireland, then I go to the UK, and then I move on next. Is that still what you're looking for? I mean, if I hear Gavin, he's gone to Nordics, he's going here, he's moving around. Is there a route to scale that you would kind of advise our audience to say, look at these things and these markets, or here's how you address those markets probably more particularly?
I think it's very, very sector specific, and it's very difficult to box it in. You have to go to Ireland and expand to the UK and go beyond that. We've a lot of experience in medical device, life sciences, and the first market they'll go to is the US in most cases, because that's where the big addressable market is. That's where the opportunity is. However, we would strongly urge people to try and bed down your first reference site, your first test site, as close to home as possible. Pick the low-lying fruit. And that could be, for med device, getting involved in special initiatives with the HSE, could be working with consultants, hospitals for software, could be corporate partnerships. So aligning yourself with Facebook, who might bring in, there's some fantastic opportunities in the ecosystem across Facebook, Google, Twitter, and they have programs there to try and work with young, innovative Irish companies. It's incredible the level of innovation that's out there that big corporates like this can't get access to, because they've just gotten too big, and they're constantly looking to access smaller companies to bring in new ideas in their space. So there's loads of opportunities in your doorstep, and that's a great first step. After that, it depends where your market is. So go knock yourself out anywhere. However, I wouldn't be, as a small company, chasing opportunities in 10 different markets, because you've only got a limited capacity in terms of personnel and financial resources. So you need to try and pick the place where you think the lowest lying fruit is, pursue that opportunity, come to a conclusion with it before you start chasing others around the place.
Okay, Victor, anything on
Yeah,
that?
no, I would agree with most of that. I think, again, speaking from a venture fund, it'll be hard to get excited about a business that is solely focused in Ireland, because the market's not big enough. So we would be looking for businesses that can sell internationally, can scale internationally. What country to scale in, first of all, really depends on the product, depends on the sector. You need to be really focused at the beginning on a niche, because you have a better chance of winning in a niche. So it's very much understanding your ideal customer and then going after that ideal customer. But yeah, with the potential to scale internationally. But you don't have to be selling in New York day one. It's actually very, very expensive. So you want to get it right somewhere where you can get it right, be it Ireland, be it the UK, be it somewhere where your ideal customer is, and then show that there is the potential to scale beyond that.
Prove it and then scale beyond that. Okay, I'm going to go for questions. Can I ask, has anyone got a question? Mark, if you'd like to start us off.
Sorry, back up again, guys. One of the issues that's constantly coming up, and a recent EI event as well came up as well, and it's been spotted by EI as being a gap in this market, is the follow-on. So we were pretty good at doing the seed funding, but follow-on tends to be a challenge in this market in terms of the funding. Do you have any comments on how we can improve that part of the funding ecosystem? Because as you build your team, your cash flow tends to become negative. And not every company can fund themselves through cash flow, and growth needs to be invested in.
Ireland is a small country. It's a small market. There's limited funding out there. You need to position yourself that you can raise money beyond Ireland if you're looking to raise larger check sizes. So it's about building relationships internationally as well as in Ireland. Or there are other options other than just funding. Gavin grew a business without raising a Series A. I think you need to be, when you raise as much as possible. Statistically, companies that raise more than $1 million seed round will be much more likely to be successful than a company that raises 250 to 300, because management can focus on building a business rather than focusing on constantly raising money. So if you raise a lot, and then have a plan that's beyond Ireland if you're going to need a lot of money for your business, or be looking at other options, venture debt. There are other options out there. Having a really, really exciting story. It is competitive. There's good businesses out there, but there's not that much money. So you want to really, really have a good story. I mean, a good business will raise money. A good story will raise money, but you want to focus on that. Yeah.
I'm going to answer this question for you, okay? Because as part of HBand, we did invest into a company which was not seed or which wasn't a startup, which was, I think, second or third round. And it was a challenge because I led that particular initiative. So many people did question me as to why because we were getting less stake for the kind of money that we were investing. So it all depends, but the confidence I had in that company and why I convinced we were about 15 of us who invested in that, and why we invested was, number one, the person who was leading the company, the two of them. Number two, the team that they had. Number three, the whole setup, the way they had scaled up, and the confidence that they will be able to scale up, and the sales and the potential markets that they were looking for. So these kind of benchmarks that they had set for themselves led us to believe that even though we were getting less stake, and it's okay for us to invest in them. So it all depends, again, and how fast they can scale and what markets. Again, Ireland is a small market, like I agree with them. US is a market, but it is a little bit of saturated at this point in time, I think. So people need to explore and go into other markets, like Asian markets, which I have seen are kind of coming up. So they were looking at like Australia, Hong Kong, Singapore, which I thought was a good opportunity for them to scale up. So it is, you can, but it all depends on how they present themselves when they come to the investors.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Anyone? Yes, I've two down the back, maybe. If you could step across, we'll take them.
My name's Stephen O'Connell, and from Safe20. The question I have for you guys is, you said start the engagement early in terms of the looking for investment and networking, etc. How important is having the patent protection all in place, or is it you need to have that before you can start the engagement, and how much protection do you have to have on your concepts?
Gavin said something about how you surround yourself by mentors. He reached out to Stuart Kenny and stuff. I personally believe that people invest in, it's the hard part of business is the execution, not the idea. So I will not be obsessed whether you have patents or not, because we're not investing in your idea, we're investing in your team. So it's not really about protecting the idea. Now there is exceptions to everything. Some really, really hardware businesses maybe, but we wouldn't be a hardware focused. So we're really interested in the team and how the team work rather than whether you've protected your idea.
Look, any kind of patent-dependent business would not be my area of expertise. I'd back that up. I would think it's all about the team. When you're talking about raising money, it's always going to take a lot longer than you think. It's a constant battle, I think, in most startups. Certainly was in ours. We've been raising money for 6 years, to be honest. So it's a big distraction. So just get on with it early. But it depends on the industry, the business that you have, and maybe that that patent is actually what your USP is. I don't know.
Okay, thank you. I have one more down the back, and then we'll move to closing.
Hi. We have an exceptional team of programmers building an app for Oculus Go for the global market, so not Ireland. We have a prototype, a working prototype, and we want to know step 1, 2, 3, what to do next. And can you tell us what we want to talk to Facebook, of course, first of all, because it's for the Oculus Go. But if you can tell us what to do, we'd be appreciated. Thank you.
Maybe Alan, I'll ask you. Can we have the playbook, please, for success? Alan, maybe if you could just kind of paint what sort of a picture, over the next 6 months as the commenter starts to build a model.
Well, the guys were talking about networking, and I think in Ireland we're inherently good at that, and that's the most important thing. Attending events like this today, I have a number of colleagues in the room here today from our Start division. They will be great people to talk to, have a coffee with afterwards about the types of supports that are available for companies like yourselves. It's phenomenal that you already have a team developing a product, so there's obviously a few bob there somewhere. But in terms of leveraging the ecosystem, what the BICs are doing around the country, in particular Dublin BIC, all the accelerators, incubators, the mentor programs that are out there, there's a huge amount of support, both financial and strategic, that's available to you. So I'd urge you to get out there, talk to as many people as possible, engage with EI, engage with the BICs at the very outset.
Okay, very good. Okay, we're going to leave it there. I'll thank the panel, to Punam, to Victor. Alan, sorry?
Yeah, sorry, I just want to make one point, right? We're in a room here, and we always like to take this opportunity when there's so many people in a room like this. You're all advocates for Irish industry and Irish business. We frequently, when we go overseas, we talk about how great Ireland is and all the fantastic multinationals that we have. And we have them, and they are fantastic. What we don't talk enough about is Irish companies, success stories like Gavin's here, iCabbi. So we would urge people there that when you're out there talking about how great Ireland is, great place to start a business, a great place to come and live and work, we should be referencing more like the Irish success stories like this guy here beside us. And we'd love to see you guys doing that more and more, because we need to raise that profile, and that helps you when you're starting your business. It helps you get out there. It helps investors kind of be more conscious, aware of you. So thanks.
So well done. So thank you to Punam, to Victor, to Alan, and for coming in and joining us. And Gavin, of course, thank you. So I'll leave you go, and we'll move to close up. So thank you to our panel, and much appreciated. Thank you so much. Thanks. So thank you all for coming along this morning. A nice early start on this beautiful sunny day. We're officially in a drought, in case you didn't know. And 3 months ago we were under about 6 foot of snow, but only in Ireland. Anyway, I hope you enjoy the summer weather as we move into it. Let me just close off by saying, I mentioned at the outset that Dublin BIC run this programme quarterly, and it's a great opportunity to come together, to share, to learn, and to hear some stories there. If you don't know us, go onto our website, find us, register with us. We'd love to have you along at future events. At the core of what Dublin BIC does is our Investor Ready programme, and that's working with entrepreneurs, like Gavin, where we met him years ago, and we've helped him on his journey a little way along. If you'd like to kind of go on that journey and you want some support and advice, we have our Investor Ready programme. We work with entrepreneurs, we help you scale and grow. Come and find us. We're going to be outside, we're going to be having coffee, and come and have a chat with us. We'd love to hear your story and see can we help you. Lastly, to our sponsors, because we couldn't put on these events without them. So we have Smith & Williamson, and Mark is here with us this morning. We have OBH Partners, our legal partners, and then to Facebook for hosting us here this morning and giving us maybe a kind of a different insight into scaling and building, and we appreciate that. And John, for your time, we appreciate that, and for hosting us here this morning. That's it from us. There's coffee outside. I'd urge you to do a bit of networking, share your business cards, and hope you enjoy the rest of your morning. Very good. Thank you all for coming. Thank you.